Welcome back to the Dear Old State Update, brought to you by Penn State Sports Night. I'm Charlie Drexler, and I'm alongside Brady Welsh as we have the latest on everything Penn State sports.
It's been a thrilling couple of weeks for Penn State sports, from women's hockey making their first ever Frozen Four, men's hockey set to begin a postseason run of their own, and wrestling winning their 5th national championship in a row. Our beat reporters have the inside scoop. The Dear Old State Update starts right now.
Penn State softball had a busy weekend as they played 3 games against Wisconsin for their first home series of the season. They dropped 2 of the 3, however, they are successful 20-11 on the season. We now pass it on to Kylie, Hannah, and Gina with a look into Penn State softball.
Rain or shine, not much stops Penn State softball from getting after it. After an on-the-road defeat to Oregon, Penn State was eager to come play at their home field surrounded by friends, family, and fans. On Friday, despite a strong fight from the Nittany Lions with notable offensive performances from Michaela Barbonente and Allison Wananker, who each had a 2-run home run to keep the Lions in the game, the Nittany Lions ultimately fell to the Wisconsin Badgers, losing their first game 5-6. Coach Caldwell talked about how the Lions would bounce back for their second game on Saturday, and bounce back they did. With a huge win over the Badgers, Penn State had 14 hits and was able to rack up 14 runs during 6 innings, shutting down Wisconsin, who only scored 8. Starter Bridget Nemeth was able to keep the Badgers quiet throughout the first 3 innings.
Doesn't matter where she's playing. Obviously, she loves playing at home, but the kid wants the ball, and she did a really good job. Now, our kids love playing behind Bridget just because of that energy that she brings on the mound.
Penn State continues to foster a positive environment that allows their young players to flourish. Freshman Brianna Hannock is a perfect example of that.
Honestly, it's just knowing that my coaches and my teammates have that trust in me, and I know I can get it done. They know I can get it done, so why not get it done?
Right? And we always talk about this, gritty, not pretty, but really just proud of our kids bouncing back. We talk all the time about being tough and resilient, and they absolutely showed that. So I'm just happy to go 1-0 today against a very good Badgers team.
A beautiful weekend for some softball here at Beard Field for Penn State season home opener. The fan turnout was great with packed stands, and I got to witness the team's chemistry firsthand. Ultimately, the Wisconsin Badgers did take the series, winning 2 of the 3 games. Heading into the final game of the series, both teams were dialed in, playing strong in the defensive end. Penn State left minimal runs throughout the first 6 innings, coming back to take the lead in the bottom of the 6th. Wisconsin responded in the 7th, coming back to score 4 runs and shut the Nittany Lions down for good, ending the game 4-7. Penn State will head on the road to face Rutgers this weekend, looking to get back in the winning column. For Penn State Sports Night, I'm Hannah Mueller.
Hannah here had a great look into Penn State's struggles this weekend, but the tarps have been lifted and the dirt has been raked because softball is officially back at Penn State. Yesterday, the team finished their season home opener series versus Wisconsin in front of a crowded Beard Field. After a bleak Friday game, the sun came out for the remainder of the series, making it a beautiful weekend for some softball. Both teams went into Sunday's game looking to take the series, but it was the Wisconsin Badgers who managed the victory. Okay, being at Beard Field, what were the major differences that you saw from the team on Saturday where they won, and then Friday and Sunday where they just fell short to the Badgers?
Obviously, the most notable difference was their offense. Their bats were on fire on Saturday, being able to rack up 14 hits and tacking on 14 runs. It was just an amazing performance from the top to the bottom of the lineup. Obviously, on Friday, you had that slight gap going 2 for 10 on the bottom order. But they really were able to come back and show out on Saturday, and unfortunately just weren't able to carry that over onto Sunday.
Like you said, the biggest difference was the offense. Those bats didn't get going on Friday until the bottom of the 3rd inning. I mean, we did see 2 home runs in that inning to tie the game and then give Penn State the lead, but they fell short towards the later half of that game. It was very back and forth the whole time, and Wisconsin's gritty small ball is what pushed them over the edge. And then on Sunday's game, similar story. I mean, they were being shut out until the 5th inning. So Penn State didn't score until the 5th inning. They put 4 runs up on the board, but ultimately it was not enough because Wisconsin made that huge comeback to win that game.
Yeah, on Sunday, we saw that rally that Penn State had. They were able to keep Wisconsin pretty quiet the first couple innings, only letting them score 2-3 runs, but then they just had that breakout moment in the 7th inning where we just had errors and Penn State wasn't able to come back during their offensive moment and just being able to take the win.
Yeah, now this was the first time we got to see them play at home since May 4th of last year. Since that moment and that game, Coach Crowell was brought in her largest freshman class in her history of being coach here with 7 freshmen. Can you tell us a little bit about how they've added chemistry to the team, maybe, Hannah?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, you have Allison Oneacre, absolute phenom at third base. She's ranked number 1 in that position, but yet we saw her primarily playing shortstop this weekend, which really just speaks to her versatility as a player. And at the plate, she's 11 home runs, already racking up these stats just as a freshman, and that's incredible. And then on the other side, you have Brianna Hannock, who, as an outfielder, made a diving catch during Saturday's game in the top of the 7th to shut down what Wisconsin was starting to build. And to speak to her own bat, she had 2 home runs during Saturday's game. Both standout freshmen, and we're really looking forward to seeing how they grow throughout the season. That's one thing Coach Crowell has really been focusing on is this freshman class has so much to grow, but they're already so good that she's very excited to see how they progress.
Absolutely. It's always nice to see young faces kind of fill those spots. Now, on the other side, Gina, with some more veteran players, was there anything that you were kind of maybe not expecting or some other standout players that you saw from the weekend?
Definitely. I want to talk about Jordan George. Game 2 of this series was the Jordan George game. She went 3 for 3, had a grand slam in the bottom of the 1st inning, and another home run later on in the game. And her 5 RBIs on the day tied the single game record for RBIs for this season. She's not normally someone who is starting in this lineup. So it was just amazing to see her break out over this weekend. And then another performance was Bridget Namath in the circle. This was her return to Beard Field after being sidelined for all of her sophomore season last year. So it was incredible to see her come back out onto the field. She got the win on Saturday, and at the plate, she had a line drive in that 1st inning, putting her on first base and setting up Jordan George for that grand slam. So just all around an amazing performance from the both of them.
Absolutely. Now, it didn't really seem like hitting was the issue for them, but moving forward farther into Big Ten play, and they take on Rutgers this upcoming weekend, what changes do you think this Penn State team needs to make in order to kind of clinch those closer games?
Definitely, they need to be able to close the book in the bottom innings. We see so many times throughout this series, we had moments where the pitching, they just weren't able to fully shut the book, close it down. And obviously the hitting wasn't the issue, but it was a primary problem. We weren't able to get the bats hot, and it was really unfortunate. You had their rally on Sunday's game, but then in the bottom of the 7th, they just weren't able to keep it going. And hitting is contagious, energy is contagious. So they really need to build on that momentum that they got during Saturday's game, disregard what happened Friday and Sunday, and build on that, because Rutgers is a gritty team, much like Wisconsin. Small ball, gritty, and you have to be ready for anything. You really have to be able to wipe the slate and move forward and clean up those small errors.
Right, like Coach C said, Rutgers is just like Wisconsin, gritty softball, small ball, and really good situational hitting. So like she also said that these pitchers need to limit the amount of leadoff base runners that they are allowing on base, because Wisconsin was able to capitalize on those moments. And then for Penn State's lineup, when they do get runners on base, they need to capitalize on those moments because they left a lot of runners on base. But the main priority is going to be shutting the door when it comes to those when they're leading, so that they hold on to their lead. Those pitchers really need to shut the door and finish the count strong, because they'll come out of the count strong. But when the batters are really working the count, working in there with 2 strikes and 2 outs, Penn State's pitchers struggle to close the door. So that's really going to be their biggest thing going into the rest of Big Ten play.
Right, and I wanted to ask, kind of in retrospect, looking back on Wisconsin, if there was any players of theirs that stood out to you guys and things that Wisconsin did that Penn State maybe wasn't able to do.
Definitely, I want to talk about Shelby Jacobson on the mound for Wisconsin. She pitched a complete game on Sunday with 146 pitches, and what's more impressive to me is that her coaches trusted her to stay in the circle even when Wisconsin was trailing. And besides Sunday, she pitched on Friday and got that win on Friday and closed out that game. So Shelby Jacobson, what she was able to do in the circle for Wisconsin, she's one of those very reliant pitchers, and this is a prime example of that.
Yeah, and just really quickly, we have Everly Bojan. She has a batting average of over 400, which for a leadoff hitter, you don't really see often. And she has an on-base percentage of 515. That's, as a leadoff, you can clearly tell that she comes in clutch for Wisconsin, being able to get on base in 2-strike, 2-out moments. And we really saw that during the game on Sunday. And she was just a standout performer.
Absolutely. So looking forward to Rutgers this upcoming weekend. After facing them, Penn State will be back at home on April 3rd as they continue in Big Ten play versus Maryland. Now let's head over to a team whose season just concluded. We have wrestling at the desk.
The Penn State wrestling season has concluded, and the Nittany Lions have come out on top for the 5th straight year. I'm Nico Rodriguez, joined alongside Evan Smith and Connor Patterson to bring you the latest from the mat. So, Evan, you were there in Cleveland, boots on the ground. What was the atmosphere like? What was the tournament like?
I mean, there's nothing like the NCAA wrestling tournament, both being there and on TV, just the amount of matches, the amount of stuff going on, and the amount of people there. It's always an incredible experience. I will say, you were there with me in Philly last year. That was a way more pro Penn State crowd than this one up in the Factory of Sadness, known as Cleveland, Ohio. It was mostly an Ohio State crowd, and I think the Oklahoma State fans were probably a bit louder than the Penn State ones in attendance. So you heard a lot of Nittany Lions getting booed throughout the weekend, which was unique to see.
So Penn State walked away with 4 national champions, which kind of sounds a little bit surprising. We had said earlier there were 9 guys that could do it. I say 9 just because Braden Davis was kind of a question mark all year long. And then outside of that 9, there was really 7. I didn't see Blaze or Mirasola coming out as national champions, but those other 7 entered as number 1 seeds. So what went right, what went wrong this weekend?
Yeah, so looking at the 6 men that they had in the finals, going into that, the line a lot of people put out was, okay, 5 out of those 6 end up winning the Natty, and that was my opinion too. I thought one of Luke Lillidahl or Rocco Welsh would get chipped out in a close matchup. Sure enough, Welsh did in fact end up losing. But then the surprise for me was Shane Van Ness. Before I dive into his finals match, if you want to become a wrestling fan, because I know it's like a very niche kind of sport, watch Casey Swiderski versus Shane Van Ness. That overtime was one of the funnest things that I've ever watched in person. I was just sitting there laughing because they looked like 2 cats fighting in the middle of the night. But in that finals match, Aiden Valencia, a redshirt freshman out of Stanford, number 10 seed, so he wasn't supposed to be there per se, but he said he had Van Ness scouted, was working on getting his neck strengthened because he thought he was going to have this match. And sure enough, you could tell Van Ness just couldn't get any shots going on Valencia. A little bit of controversy on his finish, though, in sudden victory. It looked like Van Ness still had Valencia's leg when that takedown was rolled, but when they go to review and they review it, there's not much you can say about it.
Yeah, I think looking at the picture, the 4 Penn State guys who won, it's no shock. You thought those 4, Lillidahl, Messenbrink, Haynes, and Barr, were all going to cruise to their own respective victories, but the use of the shocking one was Van Ness. And I personally thought Welsh was a little shocking. He walks as a 1 seed. I was expecting a little bit more. And then you have Blaze. He just had a tough go, just a tough weight class for him to win in. And the nice thing is they'll all be back next year, though. So you don't really lose too much. You return all these guys in the picture besides Haynes, barring any, there could be some weight changes. But for the most part, you're returning a lineup that could just repeat.
Yeah, for Welsh, he just got stuck in probably the second best weight class in the sport at 184. Max McAnally, there's no shame in losing to him. The only shame is his walkout song. Don't know why he thought Rattlenbach would be a good decision there. But then Messenbrink, Haynes, and Barr, they're in the point of they're going to win every match they're in. It's Messenbrink wins law has kind of been the joke for the season. He faced Mickey Caliendo for the 9,438th time, I think it was. But he's 9-0 against him, but trust me, nobody. And I mean, nobody beats Mickey Caliendo a 10th time. That's why he wouldn't shake Messenbrink's hand.
Yeah, we saw that sportsmanship, that poor sportsmanship at the end of the match. The biggest controversy of the weekend probably came at the 157 semifinals with PJ Duke, Evan, and then David Taylor threw the challenge brick. What'd you see?
So it's a weird situation because usually when you see a result not go your way and you think the refs caused it, it's kind of like a up in the air kind of thing. I think this is one of the few situations where you can say PJ Duke was hosed by the refs in this case. Because what happened was they're in sudden victory, which means a takedown is going to end the match. Duke got a takedown. He had Robida in a cradle, which means, there's no debating it was a takedown. That's why they blew the whistle. But the ref blew the whistle too early. So when Taylor throws the challenge brick, technically by the time the whistle was blown, there was no takedown awarded. But it was inevitable. Like it was a takedown to the eye. Nothing Robida could have done in that situation. They go back on the mat because technically it wasn't a takedown. Robida gets the victory there. And Duke handled it very well afterwards. He didn't want to talk about the call. He said, it's my job to make sure you're not in that tight situation. And he said it won't happen again. And just based off that attitude, how he handled it, I think it's safe to say PJ Duke will not lose another wrestling match in his career.
And there was another smaller controversy earlier at 141 with Braden Davis. What happened there?
Yeah, so shockingly, I'm going to be the one on Braden Davis's side. I know that doesn't happen too often, but a lot of people disagreed with me. I think both of the takedowns Brock Hardy got on Braden Davis were questionable. The first one, I think it was just a whistle blown too early. I just don't think Hardy completed the takedown. And the second one, it looked to me like Davis still had Hardy's waist wrapped. He was very unhappy with his coaches for not throwing a challenge brick. I think the logic on that one was, even if Braden Davis wins this match, he's not going to get past Jesse Mendez. So save those challenge bricks that you have for the more true contenders.
Next year, looking at the lineup, there are a few question marks between a graduating senior, some red shirts, potential transfers. What do you guys think the lineup's going to look like next year?
Well, I think you look at Braden Davis, will probably transfer somewhere. He's just had such a tough go this year. And you have Ono sitting behind him, a world champion. I think that'll be an easy jump for Ono to make in the lineup. And I don't think Braden Davis, after the losses this year, won't find a gap in this lineup where he fits. And then talk on Duke losing. He'll be back next year. He could be dangerous. You have Tyler Kasak waiting there. Could Tyler Kasak move weights? Could Duke move weights? And then you lose Haynes to graduation, and that'll be an open spot. And there's been rumors about Messenbrink going there. So you return a lot of these guys probably, but you just could see a little bit of weight changes.
Yeah, the way I think it shakes out is Lillard's going to stay at 125. He said that loud and clear. I think Blaze and Ono, one of them's going to be 133, one's going to be 141. That's kind of an off-season play out. Van Ness sticks at 149. I'm thinking Kasak jumps back in at 157, but Duke doesn't lose his spot. He moves up to 165. And Messenbrink, he looked bored in 165. All he does is win, and he wins very handedly. So I can see him moving up to 174 to take on that new challenge. Then obviously you got Wells Barr. And I wouldn't be shocked if Penn State goes hunting for a new heavyweight in the portal.
Yeah, we see Ono and Kasak just waiting on the bench, ready to attack. They're just so dangerous. And then shifting focus, the Hodge winner is being announced in a few weeks. Who do you guys think takes that?
I'm going to go with Barr. I think he had a late run. Now it's close because when we went into this tournament, you had Mendez and Messenbrink was the big talk. Mendez lost. Messenbrink didn't fall at all. I mean, he didn't miss a step. So I think Messenbrink could win, and I think he probably will. But I would like to see Barr win just because he went on a nice little insane run. He's been insane all year, but that run in the NCAAs was really impressive.
Yeah, so what I noticed is that usually they announce 3 Hodge finalists. This year they announced 7, and I genuinely think the reason is if they did 3 finalists, it would have been Messenbrink, Haynes, Barr. And that would have made a lot of people very mad. So I think they had to expand out to 7. With that said, if it was my vote, I'd say Barr. I expect Mitchell Messenbrink to win it, though.
Yeah,
I mean, bottom line, Messenbrink and Barr, no matter who wins this, they're both returning next year. So you're going to have the same firepower, and I don't think they lose a step next year. I think they just improve.
Yeah, they have 155 returning team points. That would be enough to win the championship by itself.
Yeah, even just having 4 finalists, Penn State's being represented pretty well. I think Messenbrink takes it. I could see maybe Jax Forrest just because as a freshman, he played so well. But it's going to be really interesting to see who the winner is. The Blue and White broke the NCAA Championship Tournament team points record with 181.5. They also picked up their 14th national title. For Evan Smith and Connor Patterson, I'm Nico Rodriguez. Thanks for following along with us all season. Now over to Panzer Stadium, where Isaac Halleck has the story on the women's lacrosse game against Michigan.
On Sunday, Penn State women's lacrosse hosted the Michigan Wolverines on Senior and Alumni Day. The 9-1 Nittany Lions entered the contest with hopes to bounce back after losing their first game of the season, 14-11 to Princeton. The 8th-ranked Wolverines entered with a 6-2 mark in the season, riding a 3-game win streak with wins over Central Michigan, Colorado, and USC. Michigan jumped on the Nittany Lions early as C.C. Stein scored first, followed by 2 goals from Ava Class. The Nittany Lions would put 2 in the back of the net in an effort to claw back into the game, but the Wolverines would then go on a major 6-0 scoring run. The Wolverines' offensive attack proved to be too much as the Nittany Lions fell 11-6. Michigan's Ava Class finished as the game's leading scorer with 4 goals, while Kelly McKinney had 2 for the Nittany Lions.
State women's lacrosse finally back at their home Panzer Stadium away from that long stint at Haluba Hall, a team that started 9-0 on the season, first year under head coach Kayla Trainer, but has now lost back-to-back, the lowest offensive output of the season today against Michigan with just 6 goals. Team going into the thick of Big Ten play, looking to regroup going into conference play.
Penn State did win the turnover battle, but a 12-7 Michigan advantage on the draw controls also proved to be too much for the Blue and White to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, to only have one man up goal, I think our our man-up goal that we did have in the first quarter was beautiful. It was a great play. But man up, we didn't execute. And then also 8 meters, we were 0 for 4. So both of those two things, like, those are really important things for us that we've got to be way more efficient on the offensive end.
Penn State will look to get back in the win column as they play number 3 Maryland on the road this Sunday. Reporting for Penn State Sports Night, I'm Isaac Hallock.
Came out firing to start the season, opening 9-0, having their biggest undefeated start since 1989 under head coach Kayla Trainer. They also reached a major milestone, becoming just the 3rd team in NCAA history to hit 600 program wins with their victory over USC. Since then, they've hit a bit of a slide, falling to number 18 Princeton and number 6 Michigan, now being 1-1 in conference play. In yesterday's senior and alumni matchup against Michigan, Penn State put up their lowest scoring total on the season with only 6 points. So, guys, we heard Coach Kayla Trainer talking about their offensive inconsistencies. So far in the past 2 games, they have only their 2 losses this season being their past 2 games. So what just wasn't clicking for them yesterday?
Yeah, looking especially offensively, and you just mentioned it, the fact that only 6 goals in the game, their lowest offensive output of the season. The lowest before that was 11. So a pretty nice drop off there for Penn State. And we look at Michigan. I mean, this team really exploited this Penn State defense. This is a Penn State defense that is very good around the arc. Didn't look like that here against Michigan on this senior day game. And at the same time, you look at the draw controls, just how important they are. We go earlier this season, Penn State beat Colgate non-conference game 20-8 and lost the draw control battle 18-11. But the offense was just so good, it didn't even matter. Against a top 10 team like Michigan, it's going to matter. And whenever Michigan goes on that early scoring run, Penn State getting down so early, it's important to bounce back right away. Try to win those draws and facilitate possessions whenever you're getting scored on like that. But Penn State just wasn't able to do it, and it made for a relatively easy day, especially early on for Michigan.
Not only the draw controls, but I think even that little to no possession time, having little to no time to even score. When they did have the chance to score, I feel like they were kind of just either scoring too low or they were rushing those plays, making it a little bit easier for Michigan's goalie to let them get another point. And ultimately those points just racked up and they weren't able to get enough of a good start early on. And that put them at harm later on in the game, which clearly was their default.
Yeah. It definitely did look easy for Michigan to score yesterday. Let's talk a little bit about head coach Kayla Trainer coming from her alma mater at Syracuse. Again, they haven't had this good of a start to the season, being a 9-0 since 1989. She comes in and they have had such a dominant start. Take away those 2 losses. What do you guys predict the rest of the season to look like? And what has been her legacy that she is starting now at Penn State?
I mean, look at last season. They lost in the first round of the Big Ten tournament to Johns Hopkins.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening this year. I see this team going further into the Big Ten tournament. Very likely I could see this as an NCAA tournament team. I mean, credit, and we were just talking about it, credit to Coach Kayla Trainer. The resume there speaks for itself, not only as a coach, but getting her to come from her alma mater at Syracuse. Talk about AD Pat Kraft as well for a second. The fact that he makes some big splashes in head coaching hires, Kayla Trainer is no exception. Again, coming from her alma mater, and she's had an excellent career as a player in her own right. Yeah. But just looking at the culture change she has brought to this program, that's no knock on former head coach Missy Doherty, who spent 15 seasons at the helm of this Penn State program, Big Ten Coach of the Year back in 2015. 9 times this Penn State team under her went to the NCAA tournament. 2016, 2017, NCAA semifinals under Coach Doherty. So very, very good. But down year last year at 7-9, chose to step away from the program. Kayla Trainer has really brought a spark of life back into this Penn State program after last year. And also the fact that Coach Trainer, she is a young head coach, so could stick around for many seasons to come, could be a big player in the Big Ten, the NCAA national level, could make Penn State a winner for many seasons to come. It's very exciting for this program.
Definitely, yeah.
She definitely has that very competitive mindset. And not only that, but she also is a female coaching a female team. And I think she can relate to the girls a little more and really wants to see them win and having that fast-paced mentality even. I think yesterday was really just a bad game for Penn State. I mean, I think they usually perform at a much faster pace. They really are more offensively talented. And I don't think yesterday determined how the rest of their season is going to look, just as Isaac mentioned. I think if they really do well in the Big Ten after postseason, they're really going to be a team that everyone else is a little scared of.
Definitely. Let's talk a little bit about some of the players in the team. So Peyton Wayman yesterday and Kelly McKinney, they both had 4 of the 6 goals scored for Penn State. Have those kind of been your guys' star picks for the season? Are they looking to your early MVP picks? What do you guys think?
Yeah, gotta love those two. Huge for this program. But I'm gonna go to Rocket Allen real quick. The freshman at attack, she has been so good for this team. I mean, the second leading goal scorer on the squad, approaching 30 goals in the season. Already has several nods for Big Ten Freshman of the Week. A huge pickup from Coach Trainer out of the Midwest area, out near the West Coast there in Colorado. It's becoming a lacrosse hotbed. So been a huge pickup for this team. She's been big. But going to this Michigan game, Sydney Manning in goal. She got a lot of shots taken on her. Did have 8 saves, a ground ball, also a caused turnover. So overall, not a terrible day for Sydney Manning, despite what the final score may have showed. Is also a former Big Ten Freshman of the Year. Delaney Radin also, she didn't get one in the back of the net, but she had 3 assists, so still facilitating for Penn State. But specifically want to go to Peyton Wayman and all that she brings to the table for Penn State. One of the senior leaders for this team, but she's played in all 11 games, but she's only started in 5 of them. And on top of that, she's this team's leading goal scorer. So she has been so good for this team. And the fact that just looking, it just shows the kind of player she is, the kind of person she is. That the fact that she might not start every game, she's realizing too that she's a senior producing like she is, but she's one of those players that's really unselfish and will do whatever she needs to do to put her team over the hump. So Coach Trainer, that's a valuable piece. You got to love it sticking around in this program. So if you want to look in early season MVP, I think you could definitely give that possibly to Peyton Wayman for sure.
Definitely.
It's also really important to mention, Trainer was talking to us about how, like, anyone that's on the bench, anyone that's waiting for their chance to get on the field, they have that opportunity. So really it's fair game who can be a top player throughout the season. And it's still pretty early on. And Wayman, Radin, I think Manning, they're all great, but I also think there's a lot of opportunity for maybe some freshmen and some sophomores to get some more play time and really step up the game for this team.
Definitely. The freshmen will be very interesting to see how they develop for the rest of the season. Looking to the rest of the season, coming up for women's lacrosse is a tough 2-game road stretch as they take on Maryland and Ohio State. Then the Nittany Lions return home to Panzer Stadium to face Oregon. This team is looking to work out some of their offensive inconsistencies and build momentum as they push towards the second half of the regular season. Now, speaking of Panzer Stadium, let's send it over to men's lacrosse, where Connor was at the game against Maryland.
Nittany Lions jumped out to a 7-2 lead, but would end up not scoring until the fourth quarter. Despite Maryland's stout defense, Nittany Lions still claimed their first Big Ten win of the season.
Penn State welcomed Maryland to Panzer Stadium to kick off Big Ten play for the 2026 season. Maryland was entering this matchup riding a 2-game winning streak, while Penn State was coming off a close loss to North Carolina. Panzer Stadium was sold out for the conference opener and set a new attendance record. Penn State wasted no time hopping on the scoring train with this laser by Chase Robertson. Robertson scored 2 goals in the first quarter alone and was crucial in the Nittany Lions' early momentum. Head coach Jeff Tamburoni understands how important momentum is when playing in competitive games.
Anytime that it's going to be a 1 or 2 goal game, every play that either builds momentum or shifts it, you have to take advantage of it.
Penn State entered halftime up 7-3, but would go on a scoring drought throughout the entire third quarter, allowing Maryland to claw their way back into the game. Midway through the fourth, Maryland only trailed by 1 until Kyle Lehman capitalized on some chaos and drilled in an acrobatic goal. The Nittany Lions held on and won 10-6. They will set their sights on another top 10 opponent this weekend in Ohio State. Penn State improves to 5-3 overall and 1-0 in the Big Ten.
Conference play began this weekend at home for men's lacrosse as they played against Maryland. This game was meaningful for many different reasons. Most notably, this is the only the 5th time in program history that they beat Maryland. Can you explain the atmosphere at Panzer Stadium that made this possible?
I mean, you have your whiteout game to kick off the conference opener, and that's the big thing. You have a top 15 Big Ten opponent coming in on one of the first sunny days in months here in State College. And there was a nice little student section. And I'll give credit to the Maryland fans. They traveled well, too. They had their own little section, and it was louder than I would have thought. But Penn State fans definitely showed up. They definitely played a role, and there was records broken. They set a new attendance record within Panzer. And it was awesome to see. It was awesome to be in attendance there because it was – I've been to a lot of the lacrosse games there, and that was the loudest one I've ever been to for them.
Yeah, it makes sense that Maryland showed up. It's only a close drive, especially for their conference opponents. So good for them for showing up, but better for Penn State. So we've had a little bit of a roller coaster this season. There's been some ups and downs, some surprising upsets, and some notable wins. What can you tell us about how the season has went?
Yeah, I mean, I think roller coaster is the only way to describe the season. You start the season off, you come in, you're a preseason top 10. You're coming off last year where you made the Final Four. Now, they lost their top scorer, Matt Trainer, so you knew there was going to have to be a little bit of a gap that needed to be filled. Coming as a preseason top 10, you have high expectations. You lose to Villanova, and now granted, when they lost to Villanova and Navy, they were in Huluba Hall, and there's a little bit of skepticism when they play in Hulu. The balls are hard to see, so I'll give them a little bit benefit of the doubt, but you're a top 10 team. You don't want to lose to Villanova. You go to Princeton, who was a top 5 at the time. You knock them off, so now you feel a little bit more momentum, then you lose to Navy, and then I put Cornell in the circle because when they beat Cornell was very good, but they were missing Hunter Keeney in that game, so there's a little question mark there. And then you go to North Carolina, and you only lose by 2. So it's a road game in North Carolina, and then you come back home and you beat Maryland, who was top 15, and that was their first Big Ten one. And that's really the big moneymaker of the season. You have to win your Big Ten games because all these rank wins are nice, but they don't mean anything if you don't win your Big Ten games. And it's been impressive to see since you lost Hunter Keeney to an injury since Cornell. They've been 2-1 in that stretch, and now you go to Ohio State, and there's a lot of big games on the horizon. The gaps have been filled nicely, but they're going to have to continue to stay filled if they want to keep the success.
Yeah, as you mentioned, injuries are starting to come up with the games, with us being a couple games into the season. So what would you say about the injuries affecting the team?
I thought that when he went down in practice, I don't know the severity of the injury, but I thought there was going to be a huge gap. You lose someone like that, it's going to be tough, but they've had some leadership step up. You have Kyle Lehman, 7 goals, 4 assists, Chase Robertson, 4 goals, 3 assists. And their motto all season has been win the faceoffs, control the possession, and then everything will just play its way out from there. It's no surprise they lost to North Carolina because they didn't control the faceoffs, they didn't control possessions, they didn't get out to early momentum like Coach has been emphasizing. But the times they win, Cornell, Princeton, Maryland, they get out to these 7-2, 7-3 leads, and it's thanks to these two guys. They're cashing in when the opportunity's there, and they're dishing it out too. They have a lot of guys who like to play quarterback on this team, and they get it around well.
Okay, so we have 2 really important road games coming up. They're conference teams. What can we see for the teams coming up?
I think you look ahead, and it's just another long stretch. You have Ohio State, Johns Hopkins, and then you return home for Michigan. But the road stretch here over these next 2 weekends is going to be crucial. I think success to me, if I was the coach or I was on that team, would be coming away 1-1 if you don't have Hunter. If you have Hunter, I think you need to come out of the stretch 2-0. I mean, that is such an asset. But if you're missing him, I think you get a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. He is your top scorer on offense when he's healthy. But you're going to have to go into hostile environments. You're going to Ohio State, going to be a rivalry. They beat you at your own place last year in a 1-score game. It was very close. And then you go to Johns Hopkins. So back-to-back road trips. It's already going to be hard on the road, but then you have them both ranked top 15, both Big Ten. And these are the meaningful games that if they want to make a run to that Final Four again, they're going to have to win these. Injuries or not, you have to find a way.
Let's hope they go into those games really confident and trailing off their good win against Maryland. That's all for men's lacrosse this week. We wish them luck as they hit the road. With one season just starting, another one comes to a close. The women's hockey season came to an end this past weekend at the Frozen Four. The blue and white conclude the season with the greatest season in program history. Meanwhile, men's hockey looks to begin their NCAA tournament on Friday, March 27th, hoping to reach the Final Four like last year. Cassie and Isabella have more on the 2 teams' great seasons.
Penn State women's hockey season concluded this past weekend after a trip to the Frozen Four, while the men are looking to head back to the Frozen Four starting this weekend. I'm Cassie Vaselis, one of the men's hockey's beat reporters, joined alongside Isabella Sposato, one of the women's hockey beat reporters. So, Isabella, I really want to start first with the Frozen Four. Can you tell me what that was like and Penn State's performance in that?
Yeah, I think overall the Frozen Four was just amazing. Every team that did their job, very entertaining to watch as a spectator and as a fan as itself. I will start off with the Ohio State versus Northeastern game. Overall, it was a pretty quick game, I think, because Ohio State just dominated the whole thing, 5-0. That's how the game ended. And it did, I will admit, get a little boring watching by the fans' reactions and them leaving, because Ohio State they kept the puck on their side essentially for most of the game, and they ultimately had over 30 goals attempted, and Northeastern unfortunately had less than 20, which is a pretty dominating performance overall. Northeastern did get close a couple of times to scoring those goals, but couldn't get past the goaltender. But redeeming the electricity of the game is keeping on their toes Wisconsin versus Penn State. that was a great game, I will say overall. Penn State did the best they could. It was a phenomenal job overall. I think Tessa Janicki getting the early goal, not even 5 minutes in, if I'm wrong, that really just set the tone for the rest of the game and how we're going to think it's going to go. Everyone was shocked. The fans were shocked. I think Wisconsin was shocked. They didn't know what they were getting into. They're going in as the favorites of entering the final round of the Frozen Four. So they realized that's competition. They got to lock in, essentially. And they did. They did not long after get the first goal for their team, which tied the game. Maddie Christian got the second goal for Penn State, and then Wisconsin got the goal. It was a game of tag at that point. And then Wisconsin took the lead 3-2. And it was a long period before, 6 minutes before the third period ended, Tessa Janicki gets another crucial goal, which tied the game at 3-3, essentially. So they're going into overtime. Everyone's looking, is Penn State going to win? Is Wisconsin going to win? But ultimately, Wisconsin did end up winning 2 minutes into overtime. But I will not say anything bad about Penn State. They did everything. Everyone did their job. Coach Jeff did his job. It was just a great season for them. And then looking into the final round, Wisconsin versus Ohio State, nothing more you could say. It was a great game. Ohio State and Wisconsin basically had the same number of goals, even though Wisconsin had it dominating up 2-0, thinking it's a shutout. Not yet, because Ohio State comes back in the third quarter, not even 5 minutes in, tying the game at 2-2, which is pretty great to see. Now the game's getting started. The fans are thinking, essentially. But with 13 minutes left of the game, Wisconsin got the higher up, making it 3-2, and they ultimately won the national title for women's hockey, the Frozen Four overall. That makes their 9th national title, which is pretty dominating for their program.
Yeah, definitely a really good Frozen Four. That Wisconsin-Penn State game, like you said, was really entertaining. You gave a lot of credit to Tessa Janicki. I also think Katie Disa deserves a lot of credit too, back in goal. But it also just shows how strong the Big Ten teams are in women's hockey. You always have Wisconsin and Ohio State kind of battling it out in that final, and they did it again this year. But going back to Penn State, they had a really historic season. What made the season so special for them?
Honestly, there's a whole list, but I will point out the key parts. This includes, the number one's going to be obviously them making into their first Frozen Four round ever, which is historical under Coach Jeff's leadership, under Tessa Janicki's senior captain leadership. Everyone did their job. I compliment all the women who did everything. There was no struggling. Their record for program history is 33-6, which means everyone did their job. I believe this is the future for Penn State, and this team is the future. And this also includes Tessa Janicki getting the first ever in program history women's All-American first team, and Coach Jeff getting AHA Coach of the Year, well-deserved. He led his program to a historic season. And also, they beat the curse of falling short in the regional championship, and they actually beat UConn to move forward, which is great for them. Well, now that the women's hockey season is over, has concluded, we now look at the men's hockey as they start their postseason journey and try to make another comeback to the Frozen Four. So how did Penn State look this season, and what are they going to try to do to return to the Frozen Four again?
Yeah, so they ended the regular season with a 21-13-2 record. So a really good season for them. They obviously had some inconsistencies sometimes. They also hit an injury bug. You lose your captain. You lost Charlie Serrato for a good amount of time. So you did have those kind of negative things. Also, sometimes discipline happened to be an issue with penalties. But you have a lot of positives. You have so much talent on that team. Speaking of talent, you have Gavin McKenna. He won Big Ten Freshman of the Year. Hobie Baker, top 10 finalist, 51 points. He had 8 points in one game. So he's been quite a star. But now, and you also had the Big Ten tournament, which you won against Minnesota 6-2, but you lost to Michigan 5-2. They ended up winning the title of the Big Ten championship. So now you're advancing to the NCAA tournament with the 4 teams in the regionals. They're playing Minnesota Duluth in that first round, but they are going to be a really tough team to beat. They have the second best power play in the NCAA, third best penalty kill. They have Max playing, who was the NCHC Player of the Year. His brother's also on the team, really good. So it's going to be a really tough challenge for them. And then, depending on if Michigan or Bentley moves on, if Michigan moves on, you're familiar with them, but they're also really tough. So definitely it'll be interesting to see, and we will see how the team does on Friday against Minnesota Duluth in Albany. But for now, we're going to take a look at the top plays.
Starting off with men's lacrosse, Chase Robertson splits the wickets for this pretty goal for the Nittany Lions in a big weekend matchup against Maryland. Staying in Panzer, Peyton Wayman tallies one off the quick feed from McKinney in a rainy senior day matchup versus Michigan. We are still not done with lacrosse, as at number 2, John Jude Considine reminds us all that even when you fail, try and try again. After getting hit down, rips one off the right pipe and in. Penn State picks up a big win at home against Maryland. And coming in at number 1, Jordan George rips this one deep to left center, and that ball would never be seen or heard from again. A 6-run first inning for the Nittany Lions as they get a big win against Wisconsin with a 14-8 final from Beard Field.
Looking ahead, Penn State has an exciting week of sports. Baseball has a 2-day series against St. Bonaventure, with this Tuesday being Dollar Dog Night. Following this series, softball sets up for a 3-day series away against Rutgers, as Penn State looks to improve their Big Ten record.
Looking for a repeat of last year's magic, men's hockey will head up to Albany, New York for their first NCAA tournament game against Minnesota Duluth this Friday. Winner of that matchup will take on either Bentley or Michigan on Sunday for a spot in the Frozen Four. Puck drop will be at 9 p.m. Men's lacrosse is traveling to Columbus, Ohio for a rivalry match against the Buckeyes Saturday afternoon. The Nittany Lions will try to earn their 4th-ranked win of the season against the number 7 team in the nation.
And to finish off this week of sports, women's lacrosse is stepping away from University Park and heading out to playing College Park against Maryland on March 29th. For more content, be sure to follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and X, and look out for weekly sports updates and packages. For everyone behind the scenes, beat reporters, and our producers, for Brady Welsh, I'm Charlie Drexler. Have a great night.
Oh.